as a parent who had to parent in the midst of COVID, we were working virtually and having to childcare at the same time. And I confess, through all of that experience, like I enjoy being a mom, I enjoy working, but I do not like to mix the two per se. Kind of like drinking a Long Island iced tea on a sweltering hot, humid day, like middle of July. By the end of the drink, you're not going to be coherent on the other side. I tend to get stressed when I feel like I'm straddling a fence and I'm not really on either side of it. Maybe you could kind of visualize my feelings around this, but it's like a circle. And instead of having like one, maybe two arrows coming off of it, you have like 10 or 12, and they're all trying to expand out of the circle. Right. And the circle and the arrows are how productive I'm being. So when I'm juggling both duties of having to be working as well as being a parent at the same time, it's like I'm going off in all of these different directions, but I'm not really getting anywhere in any of these directions on any particular task, project. So, surprise, surprise, like I kind of suffer through the whole thing. My sanity suffers, my energy suffers, my attitude and outlook on life suffer. And worst of all for me is I don't feel like I'm being present for my kids. And calling the kettle black here, like I'm not. Because I was struggling so much with having to balance those two things and really not being successful at it, um, I decided to start drawing some hard lines. And what that looks like is if I have to be on for my kid in any capacity, I end up taking a PTO day from work. Or it looks like asking for childcare help from family. Or it looks like saying, hey, honey, if I take the morning, can you take the afternoon and we will flip flop? If that's the case, like telling my coworkers, hey, I'm not really going to be available until X time. And yeah, you could take the perspective of, are you going to remember this in 20 years? If your answer is no, then maybe you can hop off of this video and move on. But I really can't because I just feel like I'm not establishing good boundaries on being present for my kid or being present for work. And the thing is that I know when I'm not truly showing up. And that actually is a pain point for me. So if I can remember some of these specific instances in 20 years, no, but I will remember the feeling of having to juggle all of this and how it's just too much. And I was struggling as a result. And so it's less about one odd instance, right? And more about the compound of several one instances that turned into three, that turned into normal, and turned into eventually like, wow, this is not what I signed up for as a parent. Here's the visual that I kind of strive for. We're going to go back to our circle, right? So instead of having like 10 to 12 arrows coming off that circle, I strive for one, maybe two, so that I'm making headway, real headway on the things that matter. And we'll dig in deeper on the time management practices here. But what this video is about and what I want to remind you, because I needed to hear it during that time, is that you have the permission to opt out of hard. So what does that mean? So I'm going to assume if you're watching this, you're a goal-oriented mom and you want to do family stuff, you want to do personal stuff, you want to do spousey things, but you have that pesky, 9 to 5 job, all of your household stuff, just regular plain living things, and whatever else is on your plate. But we don't need to make life harder on ourselves by continuously overcommitting ourselves. So here's some of the steps that I've taken to get off this hamster wheel. Start by asking yourself the following. How are you feeling? And I mean, how are you really feeling? And if it's a 5 out of 10, I'll just say 5 or less on a scale of 1 to 10, then proceed to the next question. If you're a 6 or above, then you can kind of gauge your energy from here. However, the following steps can apply to you. Next question. If it were easy, what would it look like? How would that work? And then, and this is hard, it's simple, but it's hard, give yourself permission to do the easy thing and commit to that choice. Here's a normal type scenario that is not entirely uncommon in my house. I had back-to-back meetings. I wasn't able to move forward on any of my projects. The kitchen exploded. Why does my toddler insist on making bedtime difficult? And the only thing that felt semi-productive in my entire day was the fact that I was able to get 2 loads of laundry done because I was in all of those back-to-back meetings. So how do you want to wrap up that day? Let's go through some options that seem pretty normal-ish. You could angrily clean the kitchen because that feels good to kind of get it done. You could do after hours work to move your projects forward. You could say, fuck it, I'm just gonna have some wine tonight. You could also say, fuck it, I'm gonna have some wine and mindlessly scroll Instagram to kind of just not have to think about the day that you've just had. Or could you make breakfast for dinner? And I'm gonna dig into some of these a little bit just so that we can kind of have a broader picture of the easy choice that we could be making. So here's why I wanna advocate the easy choice. Breakfast for dinner. And why some of those other choices still set you up for it's harder than it needs to be. So if you're spending your time angrily cleaning the kitchen, like, don't get me wrong, that feels good. A very clean kitchen does feel good. That is one of my things that I really enjoy. But you still have to feed your family. And if you're really being honest with yourself on your energy levels, like, do you have the energy to even put that forward? Or are you just pushing through because you're frustrated that other things weren't able to be accomplished during the day? Same scenario applies for doing extra work after hours. If you're going to be tired the next day because you spent 2, 3, 4, however many extra hours that night working on projects, assuming that it's not some crazy deadline that you have to meet, is that being productive for future you? Imbibing in alcohol and just kind of numbing out with either TV or media. Again, we're all guilty as charged here, but it does not give you extra energy to kind of get through the rest of the day. And we still have that issue of point number 1, which is we need to feed the family. So why is this easy? First off, everybody has typically breakfast ingredients. You either have eggs, cereal, milk. All of that requires very minimal dishes to actually create it all together. You're giving yourself sustenance to fuel you for tomorrow. And with that, you're giving yourself some grace because not everything needs to be done now, today. It can be pushed off. It can be delegated. It can just fall to the wayside and say, we're just not doing that. And when life presents you extra hard scenarios, extra hard days, I just want to remind you that guess what? You can opt out of hard and move on with your life. And no one here is going to judge you. Here's a little framework activity for the days that you find yourself where your energy levels are low. So we'll go through that questionnaire again. Scale of 1 to 10, if you're 5 or below, if your energy is low, what would be the easy thing to round out your day? What would that look like? How would that work? And then give yourself permission to do that easy thing. And here's where you can use these 3 questions to kind of gauge where you're at on other life things that might be coming down the pipeline. Do you really want to throw the big splashy birthday party for your kid? Or is there an opportunity here where the easy thing would be to delegate to your event planning sister who loves this sort of stuff and, I don't know, let them plan and host it? Is meal prepping hard for you? What are some ways that would make it easy for you? Are there a dozen recipes that your family loves and you just put those on rotation? Is it a category for each day of the week? So Mondays is soup, Tuesdays is tacos, Wednesdays is pork roast, or roast of some kind, Thursdays is vegetarian. What sort of categories could you put in place so that each day of the week You already kind of have an idea of what your meal is going to be, and then you just quickly find a recipe based upon that? Is it that you literally have 7 meals on rotation and that's just what you do because that's the easy thing to do for this time period in your life? Because I promise you, there is time for variety. And when you are in the throes of raising tiny humans and dealing with work and having other commitments in your life, sometimes again, it's just okay to opt out of hard, my friend. The last example is, look at your to-do list. If you really had to get something done, and I mean if you really had to get one thing done, prioritize that and let the rest fall where it may. As they say, someone else's agenda that they are in turn putting on you is just that, someone else's agenda. And your agenda should be reflective of the master to-doer that you are. And master to-doers don't actually do everything on their list. They're very good at delegating, trimming, and prioritizing. So the next time you're having a day, a week, a month, whatever time frame it may be, where things are just hard, remember, you can choose to opt out of it, at least a little bit. Until next time, bye, Mama.